This is a self-playing presentation about the Management and Leadership Questionnaire, which is published by MySkillsProfile.com, and Pen, a TALX company. In the next 15 minutes, we will look at the purpose of the test, some different applications for it, how the test was developed and the model of leadership skills and competencies that lies behind the test. We will define what the scales measure, how an individual's responses are transferred into standardized scores, and the design and contents of the computer-generated feedback report. In the final part of the presentation, we will cover the technical properties of the instrument and what reviews of the test have said. The MLQ Leadership Assessment Test has two purposes. First, at the individual level, the purpose of the instrument is to assess a person's management and leadership skills, style and competencies, and give them suggestions about how to improve their performance and reach their potential. Second, at the corporate or organizational level, the purpose of the instrument is to benchmark the skills and competencies of a group of executives, to, for example, help understand where their strengths and weaknesses lie, and to help design learning and development programs. The test is suitable for different scenarios. Here are some examples. In selection, the test provides a framework of competencies to compare candidates against, and use as the foundation for competency-based interviews. In assessment centers, the MLQ profile provides information about a candidate's leadership level, style, strengths and development needs, to put alongside information from in-tray and group exercises. In executive education programs, the instrument will help students to understand and reflect on their strengths and development needs. In coaching, the interpretive report provides a structure for the coach and client, to jointly explore the client's management and leadership skills and competencies. And in team building, sharing profiles will help the team to understand the range of skills and competencies that the team possesses, and it will help reveal gaps in the team's capabilities. Finally, the data from a group of completed profiles will provide metrics about an organization's management capability and training needs. This is a summary of how the test was developed. Development started with a review of the literature on management and leadership, to identify characteristics of effective leaders. The authors then examined published competency frameworks, to identify the competencies that occurred frequently under management and leadership. These activities led to the generation of a concept model of management and leadership. The model is described in the next slide. The authors then wrote items for scales, and developed a trial questionnaire, which was made available as a free test on the internet. There followed an iterative process of analysis and revision until the questionnaire demonstrated acceptable reliability. Norms for the questionnaire were then developed, and data on validity was collected. The MLQ30 concept model has two key factors, management, and leadership. In each of these areas, there are three clusters of 5 competencies. The leadership key factor comprises transformational competencies, to do with strategic and creative thinking, leading and deciding, and developing and changing. The management key factor comprises transactional competencies, to do with implementing and improving, communicating and presenting, and relating and supporting. The test is called the MLQ30 because it has 30 competency scales. This table shows the leadership scales, and what the scales measure. Look at the first scale in the area of strategic and creative thinking at the top of the table. It is called Thinking and Managing Globally. It measures how skilled you are at, for example, keeping up to date with global trends, reviewing the company's global position, and developing business relationships with people in other countries. You will find more detailed descriptions of the scales, and how to interpret scale scores, in the user manual. This table is in the same format as the previous one. It shows what the management scales measure. These two tables show that the MLQ30 assesses a person's leadership and management capability, rigorously and comprehensively. Have a look at Chapter 3 of the user manual, to develop your understanding of the MLQ30 scales. This is an example of the more detailed scale descriptions that you find in the user manual. This table shows how to interpret high, moderate, and low scores on the scale that measures a person's ability to think and manage globally. It gives an example of the scale items, discussing global business trends. It also shows which other scales the scale has strong correlations with. Thinking and managing globally has strongest correlations with managing knowledge, developing strategy, and managing money. In the MLQ30, raw scores are transformed into standard 10, or Sten, scores, to indicate a test taker's approximate position to other managers in the population. This table shows how to interpret Sten scores, using percentiles, leadership levels, and definitions of competence. The table shows, for example, a person who gets a Sten score of 7 on a scale, has scored higher than about 75% of managers in the benchmark group. This is defined as level 4, and it indicates a well-developed competency, and an emerging strength. Scores in the range of 4 to 7 can be interpreted as average scores, with 7 being high average, and 4 being low average. A Sten of 8 or more suggests above average or outstanding performance, and a Sten of 3 or less suggests below average, or low performance. The MLQ30 feedback report is written in the second person, self-help style, and is a mixture of text and graphics. The introduction describes what the test measures, and how to interpret scores. The second section defines what the scales measure. The report then provides a concise one-page summary of the executive's leadership level, leadership style, and situational leadership effectiveness. The next 5 sections describe the executive style and competencies in more detail, and there is a final section with suggested next steps. There is also a link in the final section to a downloadable performance improvement guide. The report gives a wide-ranging description of a person's style and competencies, but it is not overly long. The MLQ30 indicates an executive's approximate leadership level, using a 5-level framework similar to the Level 5 leadership framework, developed by leadership author Jim Collins in his book Good to Great. In the MLQ framework, a Level 5 leader is defined as an outstanding leader who delivers exceptional performance, through a combination of well-developed skills and competencies, in management and leadership. At the other end of the continuum, a Level 1 leader is defined as an individual contributor who needs to boost their management and leadership skills and competencies in order to join the management ranks. The leadership level indicator is based on an executive's total score on the questionnaire. In order to achieve a Level 5, you need to score in the top 10% of the comparison group. One aspect of an executive's style is based on an assessment of how far they focus on managing and how far they focus on leading. The feedback report positions executives on a leadership style matrix, based on their scores on the scales that measure transformational and transactional competencies. This matrix classifies executives into 4 styles: leader, strategist, manager, and individual contributor. The objective is to encourage executives to think about their current style, and what they need to do to become more effective leaders. A second aspect of an executive style is based on an assessment of how far they focus on people issues, and how far they focus on task issues. The feedback report positions executives on a second leadership style matrix, based on their scores on scales that measure people-related competencies, and scales that measure task-related competencies. This matrix classifies executives into 4 styles: those who have a balanced people and task focus, those who have a people focus, those who have a task focus, and those whose leadership skills are at an early stage of development. Once again, the objective is to encourage executives to think about their current style, and what they need to do to become more effective leaders. Effective leadership varies according to the people that are being led, and according to the task, job, or function that needs to be carried out. This slide shows part of the situational leadership effectiveness chart that appears in the feedback report. It shows how far an executive is likely to be effective in situations where particular types of competencies are required. For example, this is the profile of an executive who is quite likely to require some development and support in situations where strong leadership skills are required, and where a transformational leader is required to deliver change. The feedback report has 6 scorecards showing the MLQ30 scale scores. Each scorecard shows the person's Sten score, the percentile score, and their current level of competence on the area assessed. This scorecard shows scores on the 5 competencies that are aspects of strategic and creative thinking. In this profile, you can see that thinking and managing globally, and managing knowledge and information, appear to be strengths, whereas creating and innovating looks like an area to focus development on. The MLQ30 Development Guide contains practical tips and recommendations, and a development planning template, to help those who have taken the test think about and plan development activities. The booklet contains reading recommendations and suggestions for first level, middle, and senior managers. This slide shows the type of suggestions and recommendations that appear in the booklet. There is a link to download the booklet in the Next Steps section of the feedback report. The MLQ30 was designed to meet the standards of a modern psychometric test. It has been reviewed by the British Psychological Society, Psychological Testing Centre. The review by the Burroughs Centre for Testing will be published in the 2013 Mental Measurements Yearbook. The British Psychological Society, Psychological Testing Centre, assessed the overall adequacy of the norms as good, and the overall adequacy of the validity and reliability of the instrument as satisfactory or reasonable. The instrument is supplied with one set of international norms, with the vast majority of respondents coming from the USA, Canada, the UK, Australia and New Zealand. Although there are statistically significant differences related to management level, gender, and age, the observed differences are very small, so there is no need for separate norms for men and women, or for managers at different levels, or for different age groups. If you are interested in using the MLQ30, but want to know more about it, reading the user manual and having a look at an example report are a good place to start. You can download these documents using the links below, and you can also get them from our website. Thank you for your interest in the MLQ30.